First to the Middle East and how the International Criminal Court has now shown that it's about as useful as the United Nations which gave rise to it. The ICC must now be where truth and justice go to die after their proposed action on the war between Hamas and Israel. People have held out some hope over the years for the ICC, but its pathetic, political, anti-Semitic and reprehensible stand now on Gaza shows the body is now just a complete waste of time. Another multilateral body pushed around by despotic regimes and murderous dictators. The ICC prosecutor Karim Khan wants to arrest not only the murderous leaders of the Islamist terrorist group Hamas, like Yahya Sinwar and the other henchmen who conceived, ordered and celebrated the torture, rape and slaughter of Israeli men, women and children on October the 7th, and who still hold 130 hostages alive or dead. Now, the ICC prosecutor also wants to arrest the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his Defence Minister for daring to defend Israel against these terrorist atrocities committed by invading terrorists, not to mention defending itself from Hamas's constant rocket barrages and terror attacks. The ICC, of course, doesn't couch it in these terms. Instead, they draw some terrible moral equivalence, an immoral equivalence, if you like, that offends every sense of justice, humanity and reason.
We'll apply for warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and also Minister of Defence Gallant for the crimes of causing extermination, causing starvation as a method of war, including the denial of humanitarian relief supplies, deliberately targeting civilians in conflict.
I'll come back to those claims later, those claims that are clearly and demonstrably wrong. But let's start with Hamas, which continues daily to enact the very lowest of human behaviour, hateful violence and bigotry directed at civilians. Hamas are openly committed to genocide, the eradication of Israel and its people, and they take pleasure in shocking the world by murdering babies, parading the naked bodies of female victims, slaughtering innocents, and by holding hostages. I've shown you as much of this stuff as I can. If you need convincing, go to YouTube and watch Screams Before Silence. It's Hamas who started the latest war with these atrocities. It's Hamas who extends the war, deliberately using Palestinian civilians as human shields and cannon fodder. And it's Hamas that seizes aid into Gaza that's sent there by Israel. It seizes it at gunpoint to use it for its terrorists and to sell for profit, would you believe? So that's Hamas. What about Israel? As of October the 7th last year, Israel did not have a presence in Gaza. It handed Gaza over to the Palestinians in 2005, more than 15 years ago. Gaza's food, power, medical supplies and trade was all facilitated by Israel. None of it could have happened without Israel. And after October the 7th, Israel, of course, declared war against Hamas, vowing to root it out altogether from Gaza. Every civilian death in Gaza since that time has been because of Hamas refusing to surrender, refusing to hand over hostages, and hiding among its own civilians. If Israel had no care for Palestinian lives, the war would have lasted about a week and Gaza would have been obliterated. The ICC talks about humanitarian supplies withheld from Gaza. Without Israel, there would be none. The Gazans would have starved. It is only thanks to Israel that Palestinians are surviving in Gaza. And it's Hamas that often seizes the supplies, denying civilians their food. The reality is the opposite of what the ICC suggests. The ICC also alleges Israel has targeted civilians. Remember early in the conflict when much of the world focused on Israel bombing a hospital and killing 500 civilians? No such event even happened. The rocket came from Islamic Jihad, a brother in arms with Hamas, and it killed a handful of people in the hospital car park. But the facts did not stop all the outrage being directed at Israel. Likewise, the terrible tragedy when Israel accidentally hit and killed aid workers, a tragedy made more likely by how Hamas seeks to control all aid. But if that's to be portrayed as a deliberate act, then what of other incidents where in the fog of war, Israel has killed some of its own soldiers and even Israeli hostages running to what they thought were their rescuers? Were these accidents, or did Israel mean to kill its own too? The answer is obvious, and the ICC posturing is obscene. The maelstrom of war is always horrendous, and the facts show that Israel has put its own people at risk and slowed progress in this war week after week in order to minimise civilian deaths. Even the UN has had to quietly revise downwards this month its estimated civilian death count by almost 50%. That's because Hamas propaganda does not match reality. That's because the outrage against Israel conjured up by Hamas and other Islamist groups, as well as anti-Western actors worldwide, it just does not stack up when it comes to the facts. Facts matter, morality matters, and respect for human life and the rule of law matters. That's why this ICC effort is a travesty. To draw equivalence between Hamas and Israel is something that should be beneath any proper legal institution. This treatment of Israel at the hands of the international community clearly demonstrates exactly why Israel has no option but to defend itself, to accept responsibility for its own survival rather than rely on any help, any assistance, or any justice from the world of multilateral diplomacy.